Thanks for joining us today. I'm Brandon Dukeman here with Will Harvey, and this is the Daily Wealth Junkies Show. We've got another awesome guest in store for you today. But first, before we get started, like always, don't forget to join us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/wealth junkies and subscribe to the show so that way you're not missing any of our daily episodes and all these daily interviews that we're doing. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Will to introduce our guest for the day.
Thanks, Brandon. Today on the show, we have Beth Azor. So she has been in commercial real estate for 34 years. She started as a leasing agent and eventually started buying her own deals in 2004 and also training other leasing agents on what to do and how to do it correctly. So right now she owns and manages an $80+ million portfolio. And I'm going to let her talk all about that. She clearly knows what she's doing in the commercial space. So Beth, with that, thanks so much for coming on the show. Can you just give the listeners a little bit more about your background and what got you to where you are today?
Sure. Thanks, Brandon, and thanks, Will, for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely.
So I started when I was 26. I had left school and did a couple other jobs, but I got into the commercial real estate space and at 26 joined a company with 11 people, and I started in office leasing. I thought it was very boring. 3 months into it, I had this opportunity to lease a retail shopping center space, and the rest is history. I was with that company for 18 years and really, really did a great job leasing. And in my opinion, leasing leads to everything. So it led to me selling shopping centers for clients, looking for property for tenants. I represented LA Fitness, TJ Maxx, Starbucks, some different corporate clients, and then grew through the company, was the president the last 6 years I was with the company. And when I left, we had 150 employees.
Wow.
I left in 2004 because I was a single mom raising a 3-year-old, and it was a little hard to do, run a company and be the president and be a good mom. So
Right.
I kind of semi-retired, but I knew I wanted to start buying deals. I had been partnering with my boss and my partner with the company on 3 or 4 shopping centers, but I wanted to start buying some centers or some individual retail buildings on my own. And I started doing that, and I've been doing that for 14 years. My goal was to buy a deal every 2 years, and I own 6 now. I've sold a few, and actually during the big recession gave a couple back to the bank. So the highs and lows of real estate, I've experienced them. And then, so 80% of my time is I run my assets. I collect rent, I lease space, I look for deals. And then 20% of my time I travel the country, working for big and small companies, teaching leasing agents how to lease space.
Wow, that's quite the resume there. Yeah, that's really cool. So when you started out, I want to take it back.
Yep.
What initially got you into becoming a leasing agent?
So my parents were in residential. So when I turned 18, like most kids of parents that are in residential, you get your real estate license, at least in Florida. So I got my license when I was 18, and all through college, I would work in the summers sitting open houses for my mom and my dad and make commissions on the side. So when I graduated Florida State University, I started a job at a not-for-profit of the American Heart Association doing special events, which I loved, special events coordinator, but I started making 11 grand a year, guys. So if we changed that number to today's, it would probably be about 32 grand. So
Wow.
Okay.
not enough to live the lifestyle I wanted at the time.
It's
And
ramen
right?
noodles.
You were still like
Right.
19, 20-ish. Is that right?
Exactly. So I did real estate on the weekends. So I worked at the job at the Heart Association during the week, loved my job, but not enough to make ends meet. So I sold and did real estate on the weekends. And eventually I became a rock star on the weekends, doing a great job at my real estate company. And I had actually increased my salary at the Heart Association from 11 to 23,000. So in 2 years, practically doubled my salary, more than doubled my salary. But the executive director, God love her, it's so important to find good bosses, work for good bosses. She came to me one day and she said, "We love you, but your ambition exceeds us." So
that's funny.
How great is that, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
She said, why don't you go do the real estate gig full time and just volunteer for us? so that's what I did. I quit the heart and went to in the real estate group. They were like begging me for me to come join them.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined them, and I go from working 7 days a week to 5, sitting in a trailer waiting for people to walk into the trailer so I could show them the model homes. That was fine on weekends, 2 days a week. It was very boring 5 days a week, especially when you're there during the weekday and not a lot of traffic.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine.
3 months. Oh, it was terrible. And I went to the boss and I said, we need to do marketing. We need to, do some events, because that was my background. And he said, no. We build luxury homes. You just sit in the trailer reading People magazine. And when people walk in, you sell them.
That's
and I'm like, okay, I went working from 7 days a week from a job I loved to I'm bored out of my skull. So a woman that I knew said, you need to get into leasing. You need to get into commercial real estate. And I said, oh, that's worse than that. Isn't that boring? That's selling land. That's what I thought commercial real estate was. And they said, no. There's this thing called leasing. And developers build shopping centers with grocery stores, and then leasing agents fill up the space next to the grocery stores. And when you sign a lease with the bagel guy or the dry cleaner, they love you. You become part of the family because you've helped them create their American dream. And I went,
Right.
sold. Where do I sign up?
That's
and
cool.
I started. It was so cool. And she goes, now you can't come work for my company because my company is related to your current boss, and they'll be very mad. There's a company. Funny. Yeah. There's a company in Miami, and they have a training program for leasing agents. Call down there. So I called down there and I said, who's in charge of your training program? And they told me a woman's name. And I said, did she go to Florida State? And they said, yeah. And I said, oh my gosh, she was in my sorority.
No
and
kidding.
She picked up the phone. Yeah. So, it's kismet, right?
Yeah.
She picks up the phone and she says, Beth from Florida State? And I said, yeah. And she goes, you're hired. Just come meet the boss.
It's
and
not about what
you know.
It's about who you know.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Very cool.
So that was, and I walked in and I felt goosebumps on my arms. I just thought, this is the place I was meant to be. And I was there 18 years. And when I left, I was, making 7 figures. It was a huge deal. And it was just phenomenal for me.
That's really cool.
That's exciting. So talk to us about how did you start finding companies or businesses to lease into the shopping centers, and talk to us a little bit about the first contract that was the first lease that was signed.
So good. So the first lease that was signed, I was there the first day, and my boss said, here's some employment papers to fill out and read some of this stuff. And literally they gave me about an hour of work to do, and they left to go to a meeting, and I wasn't sure what to do. And here I am again. I was working 7 days a week, and now I'm sitting in this small little conference room, which doubled as the lunchroom. And I'm thinking, well, I'm in leasing, right? I'm in commercial leasing, and I got what some of your listeners won't know what this is, but a phone book. This is before the iPhone.
What is that?
Where you literally had, yeah, exactly. You guys don't know either. It was a 6-inch book, and you could look up names of companies, and they had their phone numbers in there. And I grabbed a phone book, and I said, who has a lot of locations? And this company by the name of Sir Speedy popped into my head. They were like a copy place. And I looked up their phone number, and it said corporate office, and it had about 10 locations listed in the phone, in the yellow pages or whatever. And I picked up the phone and I called and I said, hi, I am in commercial real estate. Do you need more locations? And the guy said, as a matter of fact, I need a new corporate headquarters. When can you come see me? And
Wow.
I was like, tomorrow at 2. And my bosses came in about 2 hours later. I said, we have an appointment tomorrow to represent Sir Speedy looking for space. And they were like, what?
I'm sure they were like, you're joking, right?
Exactly. And I did a lease a month later with them for their corporate headquarters. It was a very small, 1-person office, but it didn't matter. The whole purpose was, I was bored. I thought, let me try something.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen? Got the appointment and got the deal. It was great.
That is so cool.
Awesome.
What an awesome win to come so quickly and so early on in your career. I'm sure that just gave you so much motivation to keep moving forward and just kind of invigorated you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really neat. So what was next? How did your career progress from there?
So I was handed an office building to lease, And I just found it to be very boring, dealing with lawyers, and like the people that lease office space were kind of boring. And my boss was, we got an assignment from the government to lease, or from a foreclosure on a bank. They got a big, huge shopping center, but it was about 45 minutes away from our office. And they were trying to hire someone to be the leasing agent for the shopping center. And they were struggling. And one day I said, look, I'll drive the 45 minutes every day as long as you pay my mileage. I think shopping centers might be more fun than leasing office space. They said, really? And they're like, yeah. And I said, okay. So he literally trained me every night. We had a call, like a 30 to 45 minute call, where he trained me at night on how to lease retail shopping center space. I drove up there every day and I just knocked on doors. I went to all of the neighboring shopping centers and said, hey, we've got a new grocery anchored center. The grocer's about to open and we have all this space, and we're giving some discounted free rent, like a month free for every lease you sign. And I wore the shoe leather off of my shoes and I leased it pretty quickly, and that was kind of the first big success. And from then on, about 2 years later, I was leasing 17 shopping centers for our company. That we got assignments from life insurance companies and pension funds. If they came to Florida and they wanted, a management and leasing company to lease space, they would call us, and we were successful doing it.
That's awesome. What I'm hearing right here, a big takeaway from me is that you didn't sit behind your desk and wait for the phone to ring and make up excuses about why you're not doing business. You were bored, and you just went out and made it happen. Like you said, you wore the rubber off your shoes, knocking on those doors. I mean, you just literally went out and were hungry. And I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think in the beginning, that's what my boss told me to do. And there were some days where I do it, right? And there were some days where I don't want to do this. And then I would be in the office, and then the phone didn't ring. And I'm like, all day long, like 4 hours, 5 hours, the phone's not ringing. And I'm like, okay, this is the only way I'm going to make money. And, I had a small salary, but I literally think I took a salary reduction when I went there. I think I started back at 18,000. And it was true because I took a cut. So when I was with the residential place, I think I was at like 26,000 plus commissions. Now I go to this company, I'm back at 18, and I went and worked at Macy's 2 nights a week.
Wow.
And 1 day on the weekend, because I couldn't use my real estate license and work somewhere else. So I had to go and do something else. So I did that for 1 year. And at the end of the year, at the end of the second year, I was at 68,000. And that's why I was like, okay, I am where I am supposed to be. But I remember sitting in the office saying, okay, it's pouring rain. I'm not going to go out today. And then the phone doesn't ring all day. And your pipeline, your pipeline is everything in sales.
Mm-hmm.
And, whether it's, and now, with your audience, if they're in sales, there's so much there, social media is such a great way to leverage and put information out in one fell swoop. But back then, I'm very old. I'm way older. I could be like the mother or grandmother of all your audiences. But, there's a lot of different ways now to build your pipeline. But back then, that was the best way. And what was great was not a lot of people did it. So I was able to rise in my career. I actually have, my nickname is the canvassing queen. And because people know that's, I was out there knocking on doors, canvassing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's what you were known as throughout in your company?
Yeah. And throughout the industry, throughout the shopping center industry. If you said to someone, who's the canvassing queen, people would say my name.
That's awesome. That's cool to have that. You're known for your hard work, essentially.
For your hustle.
Yeah.
The hustle. It's all about the hustle for sure.
That's exactly right.
Very cool. So I know you mentioned kind of in your intro that you, through the recession and things like that, there were some up times and there were some down times. Can you kind of talk to us about the down times and how you bounced back from those? Absolutely.
So early on, after I left the larger company and went out on my own, I had a couple early successes. Great. Like I bought a piece of land for $1.2 million. We ended up putting a Walgreens on it and selling it to the developer. And I brought in 10 partners. We all put in $100,000. So 1.2, I think 12 partners at $100,000.
So you just did it all equity. You didn't bring in any debt. Okay.
Right. And
Is there a reason
we
why?
well, it was a piece of land. It was hard to get loans for land
Okay.
only. So, and I had the friends who wanted to invest, and I thought we were going to do 2 ground leases. That was the plan. And then Walgreens showed up, and we're like, oh yeah, we'd much rather do a Walgreens, much better credit. And then the developer that Walgreens brought in, we signed a ground lease, and then the Walgreens developer said, we really want to buy this. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested in selling. I've got a Walgreens ground lease, the best credit you could have. And he said, name your price. And we ended up selling it, and the partners made 199% on their money within 2 years.
Wow.
So
that is incredible.
Huge win, right? Huge win. And then they all said, okay, what do you got next?
Yeah.
So
here's
they
my
all
money.
stuck with me. Exactly. So, but I had an opportunity to buy a shopping center I had my eye on for a long time that had a Winn-Dixie as an anchor, and I knew Winn-Dixie was going to be filing bankruptcy, and I thought we could replace them with a much better credit grocery store. And I brought in a big institutional partner, and we bought the shopping center. We were able to buy Winn-Dixie out of bankruptcy. We brought in we had a Walgreens in that center. They moved out. We brought in a Staples at quadruple the rent. So everyone was flying high. And then, and my partner, we were very happy. Everything was going great. And then the recession hit, and we were never able to backfill the grocer. And no one was expanding during 09 and 10. All of the national retailers hit the skids. So we had a balloon note, and it was a balloon note that we owed. It was going to be, 22 minus 6, $16 million balloon note. We offered 12 million, which was what we believed the value was. And the lender said, we can't negotiate with our borrowers. We can't set that precedent. And I tried everything I could. We never missed a mortgage payment. But we couldn't pay the balloon note. So we ended up giving the keys back. And 2 years later, the lender sold the property to a friend of mine for 12 million. So, which they could have had the 12 million 2 years earlier, but that was just not a precedent that these big lenders during the beginning of the recession, no one knew what was going to go on with the recession. So we ended up giving the keys back, but luckily, because I was so concerned about my reputation and about my ability to borrow in the future. So I went to the lender and I said, look, I've never missed a mortgage payment. It's completely based on this value with this balloon note. Will you please give me a letter of recommendation like a reference letter that I was a great borrower except for this. And they did. And my partner thought I was crazy asking that, one of the lessons I'll pass through to your audience is never be afraid to ask anything of anybody. You just might be surprised. So my institutional partner thought I was crazy. The lender's never going to do it. And I have it in my file, and it has helped me. Now, because I have an $80 million portfolio. I own 6 shopping centers. Everyone gave things back during the recession, so we're all beyond that. But early on, coming out of the recession, it was a scary time, and I was trying to buy a shopping center, and I was trying to get a bank loan, just a community bank loan. And they're like, well, you got foreclosed. You did a deed in lieu on this deal. I go, yes, I did. But let me show you this letter. And they're like, oh, great. And they gave me the loan.
No kidding. That is awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
And I've said it before on here, but the answer is always no unless you ask. Exactly.
I wrote 2 books. And the first book's title was Don't Say No for the Prospect. And the whole book is about don't saying no for someone else. Exactly what you said. The answer is no if you don't ask. You're already 50% there. You might as well ask.
Right. And if you're already going into it anticipating that the answer is going to be no, you're not going to be that hurt when the answer is actually no. But you're going to be surprised when they're like, yeah, sure, I'll do this for you. Like just the way you were.
I had a young man whose family, he was going to be a senior, and he was a track star in our local high school, and his parents worked for Allstate, and they got laid off, and they had to move. And they were going to move from Fort Lauderdale to Orlando. And I heard about this, and I said, well, what are you going to do with Ryan? They're like, well, it's going to be hard, but he's going to have to leave school. I'm like, his senior year. So I said, let him just stay with us. I've got 2 boys. I said, what's another boy? So he moves in with us. And at the dinner table one night, he's like, I really like this girl, but I'm afraid to ask her. And I'm like, Ryan. And I have these buttons that you push. I'll send you each one, and you push it. It's like the Staples yes button, but
that's great.
They know for the prospect.
Yeah.
So they're all over our house. It's funny. So I said to Ryan, you don't ask the girl out. She already said no. Go ahead and ask her out.
Oh,
So if she says no, you're in the same place you were.
Exactly.
So the next night at dinner, he goes, Miss Beth. And I said, what? He goes, I asked Jamie out. I go, and what did she say? He goes, she said yes.
Oh, that's
that's
so
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's,
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, you work yourself up so much that, you really don't know what your actual chances are until you ask. So I mean, I think that's huge. It happens to me all the time too. I'm sitting there like, this is stupid. It's going to be no, but it's huge. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was my background is in lending, and when I started in that business, I would go to open houses. You said that you used to do those, Beth.
Yeah.
I was the annoying lender that would walk in with a plate of cookies and try to develop relationships and ask them to go to lunch and just ultimately ask for business. And I remember being real nervous starting out, but then somebody said something to me that I think about almost every day, and he's like, look, if you ask 100 pretty girls to kiss you, 99 of them are going to say no, but 99 are going to say no, and they're going to slap you, but one of them is going to say yes. And if you treat it like that, and it's just how many no's can I get before I get a yes, then it completely changed my mindset, and it makes you much less gun shy. So.
One of my earlier gurus that I used to listen to when I was making those 45-minute drives, I had getting a college degree in sales in my car was Tom Hopkins, and he used to say, figure out what your commission's going to be. So my average commission was $3,000, and he's like, okay, and if it takes you 100 people before you can get a lease signed, that means it's $30. So for every no, you walk out of that store and say, thanks for the $30.
That's right. That's really good.
The closer you get, if you hit 100 doors, you're going to get that $3,000.
Very true.
So in hindsight, I want to ask a question about the property that went back, deed in lieu. So with that property in hindsight, what would you have done differently, or was it just a freak massive real estate recession?
I definitely would have done something differently. So, so when you're in sales, you have to have a very healthy ego, and sometimes that borders on being arrogant.
Yep.
I bet you guys don't know anyone that fits that bill, but early on in my career. So when we went to the bankruptcy court and bought, which was one of the most intellectually scintillating experiences of my life, was at the bankruptcy court, where I was competing for this space with Walmart, Target, I mean, you name it, Office Depot, everyone was trying to buy this lease, and it was little me. I was at the time 44 years old, but I had this big institutional partner. So of course we were very high on ourselves because we had all of this competition that wanted the lease. And because we had signed a Staples at $20 a square foot, I wanted to get $20 a square foot or $15 or $16 a square foot for this Winn-Dixie space. And I had offers at 10 or 12, but I was arrogant and I said, no, market dictates I can get 20 from Staples. I should be able to get 16 or 18 from you guys. So I had probably 3 or 4 serious prospects I could have signed leases with, but my arrogance got in the way, and then the recession hit, and then the timing was off. So it was really my fault. But my partner at the time, which was a huge institutional client, they agreed with, I said, look, we've got offers at 10 to 12. They're like, hell no, you got 20 from Staples. So we together, but we both looked back and said we should have taken it. So you never know. You had the market information staring you at the face. We didn't know the extent of the recession. Everyone thought something was coming, but we never would have assumed that the retail expansion across the country would stop.
Right.
And that's what happened.
Just dead in its tracks.
Yeah, it did. So, but I would say I could have been successful. Had we leased that space at 10 to 12, we'd still own the property today. We wouldn't have had to have done that.
Well, hey, that's a great lesson learned, and I'm sure that's carried forward and allowed you to be successful in the properties that you now own. So
yeah, right now I have a center now that that after a year, I woke up and realized I was actually, again, listening. I listen to a lot of books on tape, a lot of podcasts. I can't wait till yours starts on December 10th. I will be an avid listener. I was listening, driving up to my 40th high school reunion.
Wow.
And I was listening to a podcaster or I don't remember, a book on tape, and it said, what are you doing that you're unsuccessful with? And what are you doing about it? And I was thinking, my one thing that I'm unsuccessful with is I have this shopping center. I can't lease space. I am the leasing queen and I can't lease space. And and then the next question, well, what are you doing about it? And I'm like, well, I've had, doubled commissions. I've had broker parties. I've done Facebook ads and nothing's worked. And then I realized, well, I could hire someone else. And then the voices in your head, what do you mean, the leasing queen, you're going to hire someone else? What do you mean you teach leasing agents around the country how to sell space? How would that look?
Right.
I'm like, but you know what? I have partners and my fiduciaries to my partners. And I haven't tried that. And I called my partners. I said, what do you think? I think we should outsource the leasing. It's been a year. I can't do it. Sometimes it needs a fresh approach. They said, we applaud you for putting your ego in your pocket. We think it's a good idea. I interviewed a few friends of mine that lease space. I picked a team, and they've leased 3 spaces in the last year.
That's awesome.
That is
and we
cool.
did a video on social media saying the leasing queen can't lease space. And the lesson is, again, don't be so arrogant. I couldn't do it. It was staring me at the face, needed to make a change. Sometimes you need a fresher approach or a different approach.
Yeah, that's really cool to turn a negative into a positive like that, and actually leverage it into getting attention on social media and all of that. So that's really cool.
So Beth, I got a question about the kind of the leasing space industry right now with obviously like companies like Amazon and basically everything just going online and a lot of people doing less shopping in person. How is that affecting you, or is it an effect that you're seeing?
So I will tell you that there is the 4 new F words.
Mm-hmm.
That's still all.
I only know one of them.
That will be filling all of the retail. Okay, it's food.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Fitness, right? Food, fitness, fun, and then go with me here. Physicians. So medical and restaurants and boutique fitness and bounce houses and iFlies and all that kind of stuff is what's predominantly going to fill shopping centers. The retail, pure retail, like clothing stores, Amazon and Walmart and Target, have killed that business.
Right.
I have a friend who just told me, we had a shopping center convention that I was at last week in Atlanta. And he said, you're not going to believe these stats. My team, he has 6 leasing agents, 168 leases they've signed. Not one is pure retail, meaning shoes, clothing, merchandise. Not one. It's all medical, food, hair, barber, lash, Botox. It's all health and beauty services, restaurants, medical, and fitness.
Stuff that the online can never take over.
Right. Yeah, you can't go get eyelashes online. You can't get that buzz cut. You want to get the fade online. So it's services, and it's services and food. Certainly the food industry has been hurt significantly, but for the first time ever in the history of our world, eating out has eclipsed grocery sales.
Wow. And you think that's just because people don't want to cook the food and it's just so much easier?
Yeah, they don't have time. It's time. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was a mom who stayed home and cooked.
Right.
Right.
That doesn't exist anymore. I mean,
Mhm.
both people work. It's very rare that, and even if let's say it's a wealthy home and the mom doesn't work, they're eating out a lot, 3 to 4 times a week. How
Yep.
often do you guys eat out? Do you guys
I
cook
eat
at
out
home?
almost every meal because of what you're just saying right now is it comes down to the time, and I've done the math, and it's like it doesn't make sense to spend all this time going to the grocery store, coming home, preparing it,
Right.
cooking it, getting
Right.
Tupperware for it. Like that time is valuable, and that's not where I want to spend my time.
Yeah. See,
Exactly.
I'm a little more frugal, and I buy a bunch of stuff at the grocery store, and I run my fridge dry pretty much until it's time for the next one. But I will eat out, and I agree, it's a lot. Sometimes I'll order pizza more often than not to just not have to cook anything. So
Yeah.
But there's
So it
inexpensive
is
ways
changing.
to eat out.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, and the other retail the change is these digitally native brands. So there's if you guys might know, your audience might know Bonobos or Untuckit or Warby Parker. So everyone's surprised. I heard a stat that in the next 18 months there will be 850 of those opening locations, because what they're doing is they're all raising these Series C, Series E, I don't know, all the alphabet of the series funding money.
Right.
And they've got to do something with that money. And what they're going to do with it is open locations. And they're starting in the high, metro markets, right? Washington, D.C., near you guys, New York City, Atlanta, L.A. But they're going to have so much money they have to spend it, and they will expand. And you'll start seeing, you are like Wayfair's opening stores, Glossier, all of these online retailers
Mhm.
are going to be opening stores, and that's going to be a whole new business for us in the retail world.
Yeah.
So it's going to be exciting to watch.
So do your tactics change when that happens? I mean, obviously marketing is marketing, and you're marketing to individuals and stuff like that. But for different types
No,
of companies, are you changing anything you're doing?
no. What I teach, I tell some of so in my world, there's landlord rep and tenant rep. So the
Mhm.
landlord rep are the people that lease the shopping centers, and then the tenant rep are the ones that represent LA Fitness, TJ
Mhm.
Maxx, Apple. And when I talk to those guys, I'm like, how many of you are going to the Warby Parkers of the world? And because those folks aren't in traditional retail industry. They've been doing stuff online forever. And you all need to go, just, wear out the shoe leather. You need to fly to New York and have 10 meetings and meet with them, because maybe today they're not interested in opening stores, but when they're raising 80, 100, 200 million dollars, you're already seeing it, right? Every
Right.
day you're
Exactly.
opening the Wall Street Journal and saying Wayfair is opening their first store. Glossier is opening their first store. Warby Parker announced 25 new stores in metro markets. So I tell those tenant rep brokers, forget, the rollouts of the TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Home Depot, that's over, at least for now. But the new rollouts are these online companies, and I don't see a lot of my peers in the industry going and wearing out the shoe leather.
Being proactive
it's
there.
work. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I hope I'm going to see it more, because I keep screaming about it. But
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it because
great advice.
I'm busy buying my shopping center. So
Right. Well, on that note, what's your vision moving forward? What are some of your goals in the future?
So I buy unanchored strip centers. So I don't buy grocery anchored centers anymore. My centers I like high income, really high income, where
Okay.
there's a lot of disposable income in the neighborhood, probably around where you guys live.
Mhm.
I want flush to the street. I don't want any corners. I don't want any U-shaped centers. I want just a strip that's literally parallel to the high, trafficked street.
Good visibility
And
there.
good visibility, great exposure, ingress and egress, in and out, that with a lot of daytime population like hospitals and colleges. That's what I look for. And
Okay.
all my 6 are within 10 minutes of my house. And I have 5 that I have my eye on. So what I do is I identify a project I want to buy, and then I start knocking on the door of the seller. And eventually I wear him down and he doesn't put it on the market, and I buy it, and I'll
That's
pay a little
awesome.
extra more. and that's how I get them. That's 3 of the 6 I own is how I've got them that way.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that is awesome.
That's all from your hustle. I mean, that's so cool. That proves that that's what their hustle will do. So talk to us a little bit real quick about kind of the workshop training that you do to kind of groom the next generation.
Yeah, if there's any leasing agents out there that are listening, what is that all about?
So I most of the times the companies will call me, right? So the company says, we've got 5 leasing agents. Will you come to our headquarters and teach our leasing team? If a leasing agent is out there and feels like that he's not getting the training himself, anyone can call me and I'll spend 15 or 20 minutes. I also have, just for free saying, tell me what your problem is and I'll try to give them some ideas. Because I was there and it's hard. You don't get a college degree as a leasing agent. And unless you're with a company that has a program, which there aren't a lot of, I want to help as many leasing agents as I can because I am a leasing agent at heart. I also have over 100 free videos on YouTube that cover A to Z on leasing ideas and leasing.
Oh, wow.
So they can all go to YouTube and watch all the 100 videos and I'm sure there'll be ideas. And I have, I'm not as fancy as you guys. I have an Anchor podcast. So and it's not every day. You guys are crazy doing this thing every day.
So we've been told and figured out. Yeah.
Thank you, Beth.
But I applaud you.
Blame Brandon. He's the one that wanted to do daily.
I mean, crazy. So I pick up the phone and I push record on Anchor and I go, today I want to talk to you guys about X. So I don't interview anyone. I just want to add value to the and frankly, for your audience, you don't have to be a leasing agent. It's all sales advice. So just go to YouTube, watch the 100 videos, go to Anchor and and then if you have a question, if I haven't already answered your question, just call me and I'm happy to talk to you.
I love that. That's really valuable.
Very cool. So Beth, we're going to jump into our Moments of Truth segment here. It's the same 7 questions that we ask all of our guests, and we're just going to start with the first one. Who is your success role model?
So it was my dad. Mm-hmm. He was an entrepreneur of the extreme. We lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he worked at a brewery, but he also owned a bar. And he was always the dreamer. He took risks, but he executed on the risks. And my mom was like a big worrywart, and my dad would just say, calm down, June, we're going to handle this. And everyone loved him. He had like the integrity of, like the highest integrity. So people loved him, and he was a great salesperson and a great entrepreneur. So he's definitely my role model.
That's awesome.
Very cool. What is your biggest success?
I would say, besides my 2 children, writing my 2 books. The first book came out a year ago called Don't Say No for the Prospect. And the book I just wrote that just literally Amazon's delivering as of yesterday is called The Retail Leasing Playbook. And I wanted to write a book for 14 years and I've written 2 in 11 months and with a co-writer. And I'm just very, very proud of those books because I know they help a lot of people. So I love having those books.
Very cool.
Yeah. And is it difficult to write a book? We have a lot of people that have their books and just.
So I have a lot of energy. So I don't sit down and write the books. I have this co-writer who I dictate, I'll like push record on my phone and she'll sit in on my training workshops and I'll say, okay, this is like the first book was the whole idea, Don't Say No for the Prospect. And it was literally 30 stories on when I said no. And what happened? And then and then this is when I didn't say no. And oh my gosh, this happened. So her writing it, she's a brilliant writer and she can get into my head. Once I found her, it was easy to dump the stuff in my head and all my experience, 34 years of it, into a book. But I don't like to sit still. So reading and editing the books, I always tell people, if you find a typo, I'm sorry. Just if the book gave you value, don't tell me about the typo. And it's just hard. That part for me was hard. And I didn't write it. I literally spoke it and she wrote it. So again, that was perfect for me. It was the perfect combination of getting value out of my head and onto paper.
Very cool.
Very cool.
What's a typical day for you look like?
So 52 days ago, I started something called The Miracle Morning, which is a book. And
Great book.
It basically, you know it?
Oh, yeah. I love it. Hal Elrod.
Yeah, Hal Elrod. I started it. Today's my 52nd day. I've missed 2 days. So I wake up at 5:15 and I do the 6 things that he says. Then I take my son. I cook breakfast for my son, my 16-year-old. Take him to the bus, and then I usually go to the gym. And then I usually have 1 or 2 coaching calls in the morning. And then by lunchtime, I'm usually having lunch at one of my restaurant tenants at one of my properties and meeting up with my leasing agent, Kara. And then we'll usually drive the properties, show space. And then I'm back in the office, maybe negotiating a lease or negotiating a purchase and sale contract. And then pick up my son at 4:30 from the bus. And then I might have one more coaching call at the end of the day.
That's a pretty awesome
day.
And
every day, I probably do about an hour of social media every day, interspersed with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then reaching out, networking with brokers, and then catching I've got investors and partners, and I squeeze,
Nice.
Try to call those guys intermittently to let them know what's going on with the properties.
Very cool. What's your favorite quote?
So this was my dad's quote, and he said, "You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth," which means you need to shut the heck up and listen twice as hard as you speak.
That's right.
Very true. Yeah, everybody's got more to say than they want to listen to. So what are some of your hobbies?
Traveling. I love to travel. I was blessed to teach in Spain for 3 summers for my alma mater, where my kids and I went and lived in Spain for 5 weeks while I taught real estate, intro to real estate and professional selling. So that was super cool. And we traveled all through Europe when we were there. And I like film. I'm a big supporter of the film school at Florida State. And so I love independent films. And, we're at every Marvel and Star Wars, opening night at 11:30 with my boys, and doing stuff with them. Those are my hobbies.
Very cool. What's the best business book that you've read?
So I have a book club, and this will be our 3rd year where once a month, I read the book, and hopefully other people do. And then we discuss the book on like a 45-minute call. The one book for the last 3 years that has been the best received, and I'm probably going to do it again in 2020, because every time I'm at a conference, people stop me and go, "This book changed my negotiation techniques," was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
Really good book. I've read that one as well. It's so awesome.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like the tactical things, the one thing that he says when they go ghost on you, your prospect, and you just text him and say, "Hey, so I assume you've given up on this project." Every time you do that, they come back. They come right back, the prospect. It's unbelievable.
That's funny.
It's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
And last question here, Beth. If there's one key piece of advice you could leave our listeners with about achieving success, what do you think it would be?
I'll say 2 things. One, your work ethic is the one thing you can control. You can't control a bad boss. You can't control lack of training. You can't control a bad economy. And you heard from my story, right? 7 days a week, work ethic. I became a success because I put in the hours, the shoe leather, all of that. And then the other piece of advice is identify who your client is and always provide value first. And maybe that your client is your boss. Don't say, "Hey, I want to be the VP." Provide value first, and then you'll get the VP job.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's say you want the job at a big company, but there aren't any jobs. Go work Uber at night and go offer to work for the guy for free and kill it, and you'll get the job there.
Right.
But you've got to provide value first.
Absolutely. And that's kind of similar to what I tried to do when starting with the multifamily real estate business that we were doing. Is I knew a lady that was doing it, and I didn't really have anything for her that I could provide other than my time. So I reached out and said, "Hey, is there anything I can do? I would be willing to work for you for free to learn the ropes." Unfortunately, she didn't have any real tasks or anything for me, but it goes out to what we were talking about earlier. The answer is always no unless you ask. So
Right.
That's right.
Right.
So
that is right.
But Beth, how can our listeners get in contact with you and your courses? Obviously, you said you got YouTube videos, but your books, where can we get the books, all that?
So the books are on Amazon. My website is bethazor.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, and I'm probably biggest on LinkedIn. And it's all, if they just Google, just type in Beth Azor, I'll come up.
Wow, you're all over social media. You're more millennial than I am.
I'm not on, I'm trying to do TikTok. So,
wow.
I want to do I did one where I did that song by, I think, Black Eyed Peas, Do It, Just Do It, Do It, Do It, Do It. And I said, hey, you guys want to know, when to canvas? And then I just did that. And it's hilarious.
That's great. I love it.
I just got to find the time because I think it would be fun. And, I'm a big follower of Gary Vaynerchuk. You guys know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
Gary V, of
and
course.
He goes, TikTok is, the Malibu of real estate. You got to get on it. So, but I just haven't found the time. Maybe 2020 will be my year.
Yeah. So I don't know a whole lot about TikTok, but I used to be a Vine person, and
it's
still
very
hold
similar.
It is, but I still hold Vine in my heart. So I don't want to cheat on Vine with.
Don't be cheaters.
So, but Beth, we really appreciate you being on today. A lot of great value. I learned a lot from it too. So we appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah. And I wish you lots of luck on your new podcast. And I know it's going to be a big success.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, go check out her YouTube page, watch her videos, buy her book, do everything that that she has to offer, and also subscribe to our show so that way you're not missing any of our daily episodes and interviews like these. And join us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/wealth junkies. Again, Beth, we appreciate you being on the show today.
Thanks, guys, so much.
Thank you.